So let's talk some more about what exactly all this could mean. Dr. Stavros Karamperidis is the head of Maritime Transport Research Group and a lecturer in maritime economics. Thank you for being on the programme with us, and talk to me first of all about the current state of that waterway. We touched there on just quite how significant it is for global trade. Some ships are still operating there, but we also know many of the major firms are choosing to go an alternative, slower, more costly route.
Thank you for having me here today. And yes, I totally agree with what you just mentioned earlier on, the figures that you provided. At the moment, we're seeing that nearly 65% of the container vessels are taking the longer and more lengthy route that you mentioned earlier on. And of course, that costs money. Also, for the remaining 35% that is still going through the Red Sea, it's also an additional cost because, as you can imagine, the insurance cost has increased. So, both ways are having some plus and minuses. And I think the biggest problem is that, innocent vessels are being targeted with innocent seafarers suffering from all that kind of situation that is happening down there, which we really have to take care and sort that kind of issue as soon as possible.
Yeah, people may be forgiven for looking at this and saying, well, how is this any different to those Somali pirates that were threatening ships in the area too? But it is a very different situation, isn't it? Because those Houthi rebels have pretty extensive military hardware. They are able to attack these ships rather than just try and board from a little skiff alongside. It causes severe problems, not simply taking over the ship, but actually damaging or destroying the ship in its entirety.
That's correct. And as you have probably seen from the videos that Houthis have released, they use helicopters, something that the pirates didn't have. And, they're going to the next level. And that's why I think it's very important that the US and the rest of the countries are taking action as soon as possible to sort that kind of issue before it escalates any further. Because thankfully, if we're talking about the container sector at the moment, it's the quiet season. Most of the goods for Christmas have been delivered. And between now and the Chinese New Year, there is kind of reduced activity in the container sector. But unfortunately, if that situation continues or escalates, then we're going to have a serious problem that we really have to tackle.
Yes, and so therefore we talked about the supply chain issues, some of those delays in deliveries, but as you point out, not a particularly busy time, so some good news there. But there are other implications, aren't there? I'm thinking of things like insurance, just to insure those ships passing through that area. And also we've seen oil prices spike. Just explain that connection.
Yes, I can give you a very simple example. Before the overall situation, the insurance for a vessel passing through the Red Sea was 0.02%, and that has increased to 0.7%. So as you can imagine, for a container vessel that can carry up to 1 billion worth of cargo, the insurance premium was like, before the situation was $200,000 US. Now we went up to 7 million. So as you can imagine, that's a huge cost that is going to pass to the final consumer. And that, of course, is going to lead to more expensive goods at the end of the day. Because don't forget that 50% of whatever we're consuming in the UK especially comes from China specifically, and 75% comes from the Far East. So that is a vital artery for us in the UK, and that's why we have to maintain the freedom of navigation.
Yeah, and also a double whammy because most of those goods also transported using fuel. So as oil prices rise, it raises the cost right across the board, doesn't it? And talk to me too about that, the timing of this, because at the start of January, the EU imposed new rules. And just explain the significance of those for shipping. That's the Environmental Trading Scheme.
Correct. And it's also the ETS, the Environmental Trading Scheme that you mentioned earlier on, that means that the vessels, they have to pay a tariff, an environmental tariff, a levy for the distance that they cover. And that's why the longer the distance, the more emissions they're emitting. And that's why they have to pay a higher fee in terms of for the environment. And also, as we're talking about the environment, we don't have to exclude from the equation that Panama Canal, because of the El Nino and the global warming, has reduced its drought. And that means that a lot of vessels that they used to go through the Panama Canal are not able to fit anymore through there, and they try to go through the Suez, which unfortunately, as we see now, Suez has problems, so they're going through the Cape of Good Hope. So that is increasing and that's adding additional ton mileage, as we call it, in the overall transportation of the goods from various regions of the world.
And Stavros, briefly, if you will, what is the answer here? What is the solution?
come back to normality as soon as possible. Because if we combine Mediterranean and Red Sea population, we're talking roughly about 1 billion people living there. And as you can imagine, those areas at the moment are having severe impact in terms of servicing them, and of course, the North Europe as well. So we really have to bring the normality back. We have to take action as soon as possible and stop the overall operations of Houthis.
Dr. Stavros Karamperidis, Head of Maritime Transport Research Group there, a lecturer in maritime economics. Really grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.